committee would like to welcome the audience, and viewers may watch live board committee meetings online at tcaps.net/board. Recorded meetings may be viewed on demand at the same address. The committee has set aside this time for public comment. Kelly, we have a public comment?
We do. Diane Arnold.
Okay. Individuals addressing the board shall have one opportunity to speak during public comment and shall be limited to 3 minutes each. Individuals should not make personal attacks unrelated to actions affecting the school system. We strongly encourage common courtesy and constructive feedback. Detailed rules and procedures, including a complaint process, are outlined in board policy 2504.
Good morning, my name is Diane Arnold, and I did write a letter to the school board in this regard about TAG, so I will try to keep my comments really brief. We have 3 children. Our oldest is in 5th grade in the TAG program, and we love it for her. It's been wonderful. And our other 2 children go to Eastern Elementary School. TAG right now, obviously, it's a long-standing program. It's been around for many, many years, and we have this amazing opportunity to really make it even better and help more children, which I think is the goal for this. I think one way to do that is to make it more accessible. And I don't mean that we, open the doors to everyone. I think that's what makes TAG important, is that it is limited to those children who've taken the test and entered the program the way it's normally done. I mean we need more children to take the test. I think that lots of children don't take the test because it's not inclusive. We do not have busing for children. It's very difficult for parents, especially working parents who have children in other schools. And many children simply don't want to leave their home school. It's very difficult. And frankly, I think schools discourage it. I don't think that it's something that schools necessarily want to do, to let all their best and brightest leave their school. So if there was a way to make it maybe instead of an opt-in, an opt-out, I have friends and other parents that I know, very smart, great people who didn't even know about the TAG test. So they missed it. So I know that's my 3 minutes. Thank you so much. And, is that not it?
No, you
I
Sorry.
another minute and 15.
No, you're good.
You got another minute and 15 seconds.
But yeah, so basically just to make it so that we get the most children possible into the program that should be in the program. I know that my younger children, 3rd and 1st grade, they are pulled out of their classroom to do higher level. And it really comes down to equity. There should be equity for all children, including those children that are advanced learners. And so I know that I've already sent an email, so you can definitely refer back to that. And feel free to give me a call if you have any questions. And I know people that chose not to send their children to TAG this year because of the uncertainty. So I think the sooner we get some certainty for where our children will be, how we can plan for that, I think the better for our community. So, and this is our opportunity, and I really thank you guys for all you do.
Thank you.
Thanks. And then we're gonna go to school.
Good call.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
That's the end.
Okay, great. So we're gonna move on to the procedural items, and first up are the draft committee meeting minutes from August 25th, 2025. Fellow trustees, any suggestions or changes, additions, deletions? Okay. I did catch one thing, and I apologize, Kelly, to you in particular, for not flagging this sooner. Under the informational items for the district assessment schedule, 5A, we just have a blanket statement that we went over the Michigan Department of Education requirements for testing, but the administration also shared a decision to drop some testing, specifically the K-5 NWEA reading in winter, the 6th and 7th grade NWEA spring, and 8th grade NWEA altogether, to reduce testing fatigue and also, the imposition on instructional days. So I just would like to reflect that somehow, as I think this is a point of reference for people. Hey, when did the district decide to do that? So if you want to pull that up to a higher level summary, that there were some changes K through 8, I'm fine with that, or you could be as specific as I just was.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we have the district course catalog, Ms. Houghton.
Yes, lots of courses that you see here. A couple things to keep in mind. The MVHS is our Michigan Virtual High School courses. So those are courses that students this year are interested in taking that have not taken in the past, or potentially new courses being offered through Michigan Virtual that students were interested in. So we're adding those. The ACL is our Accelis courses. So keep in mind, we've got our virtual programming running up at the middle school, have about 15 students right now full-time in that. We anticipate for that enrollment to grow, but those are all of our Accelis courses. NMC acronyms, I think you are all familiar with those. Again, these could be shared time students or students who currently attend one of our high schools, who NMC is either offering these courses and have not offered in the past, or a student is interested in adding them to their schedule and they do meet our requirements for dual enrollment courses. The most interesting one on here is the history of rock. So our teachers at both of our high schools are able to propose a new course. We have a process in which the teachers in the department brainstorm. Typically, we're looking for a gap in the curriculum or a gap in potentially something students are interested in that we don't offer right now. And we have a social studies teacher who is at Central High School who proposed this course. It would be an elective course in the social studies department. An interesting course, and so it will not run unless we know we have enrollment, but we are asking to put this on our course selection sheet for next year for our students to potentially choose that as a one-semester history elective. We do share that with our counterparts at West Senior High. They reviewed it, unsure if they will pick it up as well, but that's kind of how our new courses at our sites roll.
So that is actually a geology class,
That's
the
what I
history
was
of rock.
thinking.
No,
Rock and
it's-
roll?
correct.
Okay,
The history
okay.
of rock and
You said-
roll.
You're taking.
It is an
I was
elective
gonna do
social
a
studies
tongue-in-cheek,
class.
but I think
Well, then when she
you
said
were
science, I'm like, okay, I guess it's
No,
our
Social studies,
history.
social studies.
Okay, got it.
But the
Alright,
thing that
excellent.
concerns me, history of rock is very American, very, very kind of inclusive.
Well, there's British rock,
There's a lot.
a lot of British. The
I don't-
Rolling Stones, come on.
I don't consider
That's
Come
true.
on.
that to try.
Psychedelic furs.
Queen.
Dave Prosh.
Queen, okay, I'll
I
give
can
you.
see you guys have a lot of input to the course syllabus. I will be sure to,
Always
Yeah.
listen to the Rolling Stones.
So can we just make it rock and roll so it's quite clear? It's not
Oh,
geology
rock.
class?
The kid who will take it will know what that means.
will be a course description. It is under the social studies department courses. But I can take it back to them and ask them if they wanna change the name. That's what
Say
it
Those
was.
rock.
old records
Just
on the
rock.
shelf.
Well, I think you should have blues and country in there too in time.
And
That's
I-
great.
Yeah, and that will be interesting, because there is kind of that thought of rock is not necessarily rock and roll. Like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is actually, it's actually
Broader.
debated the genre. And rock is considered a much narrower group, so they may stick to their guns on that, just be prepared.
Okay.
I don't know why I know all this.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's like a Jeopardy question, you know?
You can- you
I have
can
no
move
idea
right
why I
into
know it, but I know it.
no.
I actually once interned at Rolling Stone magazine, but I am definitely now a middle-aged mom who is not up to speed on popular culture stuff,
Fair enough,
so-
fair enough.
All right, I just had a question about the Calculus AB through Michigan Virtual. Because I know, don't our high schools also offer Calculus AB, or is it just BC now?
They offer both in person. AB, remember, is the one that gives the equivalent of the Calc 1. The BC is the one that gives the equivalent of the Calc 1 and Calc 2. But remember, they're not offered every hour. Typically, we have 1 or 2 sections at each high school. So if we have a student who really wants to take it, but it's a conflict with yearbook, career tech, jazz band. I mean, like, we have a lot of singletons that are students who are advanced. We call singletons a course that runs 1 hour a day, and they're just our conflicts, right? We schedule based on what's the least amount of conflicts
Okay.
is what our software uses, but that doesn't mean zero conflicts,
Or
right?
shared time.
So it sounds like this is a response to more demand than there was supply of teachers. But I just wonder by introducing the virtual, do you think it
Not
could change-
necessarily, it doesn't mean more demand, it just means that somebody wants this course who wasn't able to get in a seat in person.
Yeah.
That's what it means, it doesn't mean we have more kids who wanna take it necessarily. Does that make sense?
You think this might change that dynamic and create more kids who wanna go virtual now rather than a TCAPS teacher?
No, kids overall are more successful when they're in seats with teachers all the way through. When you look at AP scores
Yeah.
and engagement in the course, yes.
So the difference between those two lines, one, they're committing to a year, like both semesters, and the other one, they're just committing to the first semester, is that the difference between those two bullets? Where it says AP Calc AB and then AP Calc AB semester one? Is that the difference? The second and third bullets? Oh, okay,
not up.
you know what, it's changed from the memo, the printed memo we had,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay,
No, it's
just one, yeah, on our printed memo, it had it twice, okay.
Jesse?
Yeah.
Will it give people more of an opportunity for another elective?
that history of rock, you mean?
For instance?
Yes, and I do have the course description up. Are you interested in me reading the course description? Okay.
I'm good on that, but I was just thinking, because we're so tight on a lot of electives, that I was wondering if it just gave them a little bit more flexibility.
That's the idea, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Social studies is the one that students need 3 years of to graduate. But oftentimes we see kids wanting to take a 4th year or an elective. We have crime and justice, which falls under that. We have a history of sports, which is a really cool elective. We have some AP, but it's nice just to have another elective that's in that discipline, so that's
Yeah.
in there.
Appreciate it.
All right, my last question on this topic, I remember y'all said a couple of months ago that the AP Environmental Science was getting really popular. I don't know if you were able to accommodate everybody this year, but did they look at adding an MVHS class for AP Environmental Science?
We added sections, so at Central High School, we now have 2 teachers who are teaching it. And at West Senior High, the teacher who normally had 2 sections, we ran an additional section. So we have more actual kids in seats on those. And I would guess, cause it's not on here, but I'd have to look at the course catalog,
bet
it
it's
might
already
already be in the course catalog.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are ones that
These
are
are all
not in.
additional.
Yeah.
Great, all right. All right, if there are.
We'll double check that though,
Yeah.
Josie.
Yeah, okay, then I think if there are no further questions, we will move on to put that on the agenda as usual, the consent agenda, and move on to the learning series. Dan Tisworth.
So today we wanted to highlight our English learner program and invited 2 teachers with us today. Nicole Vanderkolk-Ryan is our content leader for our elementary program. And then Amanda White is our content leader for our secondary program, both EL teachers in the district, and they'll be going through some information today with us also. Welcome.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Just a quick overview of the students in TCAPS, how many we have. So 148 elementary, 64 at middle, and 79 at high school, and that's kind of fluctuating day by day. Students are first identified, what they do is a home language survey. So when they come in, if they indicate that they have a language spoken at home, other than English, they go through the home language survey. And then we continue to monitor them as we, during the WIDA process, the WIDA test that they take on a yearly basis. Elementary EL uses something similar as we did here too, in that our EL teachers will push into classrooms and they'll also pull out to do separate lessons. And secondary, they actually enroll in an ESL class that they attend on a daily basis. And then we have 2 family liaisons that help with interpreter needs in our district. DB Craig does Spanish and Alicia Powers helps with Ukrainian. And then also on top of that, we have an interpreting service called Genie that we started last year. Kind of a virtual live that can interpret for, we haven't found the language it can interpret for at this point. So it's really nice that you have a live person on the other end. It's similar to a FaceTime call, and they can come in and interpret. Again, if these 2 interpreters are not easily available, they also can jump into that.
Are they, so those two family liaisons, they're full-time staff who come in?
They're hourly, so what they do is they keep track, they're contractual, so they keep track when they're needed. They write those hours down and then turn those in, so there's no set schedule they have, rather they kinda keep
Yeah.
track of their hours again by contract.
And they move from building to building as
Very
needed?
much so.
Okay, great.
That's what we did at the hospital. We were
With
open
the
to interpreters on everything.
Now, is that a relatively new development, or like, has there been growth in hours for them or anything like that?
No, we've
Within-
always had
Oh,
interpreters in the district that help and you know, outside of doing interpreters, they also help, again, the idea of their family liaison, so they help as that conduit at times for all needs that these families have throughout the school year.
Cool, great, thank you.
And the good thing about that too is it's not just the language, it's context also, and that can be really important.
Cultural context.
Yes, yes, sir.
So these are our current elementary numbers, and as Dan mentioned, we're still very much in the identification process, so these numbers do kind of change daily. And we also have students that have achieved a high enough English proficiency level that they're still in our buildings, but don't require English language services anymore. So you can notice that just some trends that are in city limit buildings tend to be our biggest ones, and that's historically been true. Whereas some of our, like Cortaid, we see less students, and that really helps drive some of our department goals with student connections and where we concentrate some of our resources.
Would you say that there's been any significant change in recent years in these student populations, or like you just seeing growth in those same areas, central grade and Traverse Heights in particular?
I think generally speaking, they're pretty similar. We have seen more students coming to us with more limited English, so these numbers don't tell us proficiency levels. So that's maybe a bigger difference. I think Traverse Heights has grown, and when you think about the total number of that school, we're looking at a little over 20% of the building is English learners. And I do think that is a newer trend, but part of that is probably tied to housing in our city.
Yeah, a lot of growth around Traverse Heights, for sure. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, these numbers represent the secondary numbers that we have within our 5 buildings, serving East Middle School, West Middle School, Central High School, West Senior High, and Traverse City High. And as Dickie mentioned, we have seen shifts within populations within buildings. So overall, the numbers are consistent as we look at some trends, but we see some buildings that may have higher populations because of where students are living. We also may see a change because of foreign exchange students at the high school level, which qualify for EL services.
I was surprised to see that the middle school, where the middle school is high, the high school is smaller, that it seemed like they seesaw a little bit. Rather interesting.
And sometimes students are exiting EL services by the time they get to high school, so you will see those numbers drop.
Yeah, the ultimate goal is, you know, Amanda's at East Middle School, she does a phenomenal job. She hopes that her students, if they're with her all 3 years, will grow their English skills and proficiencies and will actually not need as much intensive support as they move into high school, so.
Yeah, I was wondering if that's what was happening with Central. Wasn't quite sure what was happening with West. Because you have considerably fewer down in the middle school, and then it more than doubles when it hits high school.
I guess is the east population, the East Middle
Yes,
School is based on the housing. That we're, you know, that direct pipeline of Heights, Central, East Middle School. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that's accurate.
Yeah.
And then do we get a
But then
certain amount
it's
of kids that are
then they'll-
older that are moving, like I think
They haven't, that
into
housing
West
hasn't
High
been there
School,
long enough.
like maybe especially like our youth population, you know, like, so we may get kids that are high school age when they come to us more too, so.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, that is an interesting trend.
Yeah, but it's, to your point, it's not.
It's the
as if
opposite
the-
almost of, that the high school, it's interesting that Central High School is lower, but
Yeah.
again, but also the fact that we're getting a lot of kids hopefully prepared is what's happening.
And that could literally change next year, next 3
Totally.
years with these
Totally.
East Middle School students
Totally.
moving up to high school. It's not like they're all defecting to the west side.
It's a very transient population, I think
Yeah.
these guys would say that very much so, and so, yeah, a lot of it's based on where the families and where the locations right now are.
And this is currently as of today, so as we move through, right, if we were to show last year's data, maybe we see the middle school is higher, and therefore they've moved up as it ebbs and flows, yeah.
So these are just the languages represented. We have at least 18 languages that we know of that families speak at home. And then this is just a general breakdown again on the data that we do have. So almost half of our population speaks Spanish. Our second most frequently spoken language is Ukrainian, and then Vietnamese and Chinese follow. And then some of those other smaller languages we tend to sometimes see in pockets. So you might have one building that has a high percentage of students who speak Persian, but then it's not spoken at any other building. So that's also kind of a fun trend to follow. And that's where Genie has been really helpful. That was the interpreter service that the district adopted last year, because I've sat through like an IEP meeting where we're able to basically FaceTime someone that speaks Vietnamese who can help us interpret those really important parent meetings for us. And then DB and Alitza, our two liaisons, are able to also help with the bulk of our families in their interpreting needs. And like Dan said, help them connect with resources like our student health clinic or get them enrolled in LEAP sports. So we have been really happy to adopt that interpreting service to help with some of those smaller, less frequently spoken languages.
Yeah, any feedback on the Genie service from the students or the families?
I would say that from on our end, on the building end, it's been really amazing. Like if a child, let's say, gets sick and the parent requires an interpreter, all of our AAs have access to those accounts. They're the ones that actually hold the accounts. And so it's made those types of things a lot easier. We are still working for ways to let our parents contact us. And so like something that we worked on at the elementary level is we're now doing a bilingual attendance form where we send families home with a business card and a QR code, and it links them to a Google form so a parent can call in their own child's attendance if they're sick. So we are working on more ways that the parents can get through to us in that sense, and we're really lucky that Google has an amazing suite of translation services that are free. And as we have more bilingual staff members in our program, I think we're becoming more aware of those needs as well, like gaps that we didn't necessarily see before with just a monolingual staff. So I think that's where we're headed, is just thinking of more creative ways to have our parents contact us when they need us.
Excellent.
And some of the learning platforms like Seesaw, they could interpret into their own language. So if you would send
Yeah.
a message, elementary sends a message out, they can receive all of that
Yeah,
information.
Class
in their own-
Dojo, a
Class
lot of
Dojo
that
does,
is
yeah.
embedded. Yeah, and some of our curricular supports we're starting to see too in multiple languages, so.
I have to say, this was really fascinating. I knew about the Spanish and the Ukrainian, the Vietnamese, but not the rest. So, really interesting to see our district grow that way.
So this is our elementary staff. We have Emily Fetters at Blair and Long Lake, Heidi Kay at Cherry Noel and Corte, Jessica Loginski is at Eastern Montessori and Willow Hill, Kathleen Schneider at Central Grade Silver Lake and Westwoods, and then I am at Traverse Heights. And 3 of us have our masters in teaching ESL, and 2 of us are bilingual, and another 2 of us have a really extensive background in teaching reading intervention. So really excited about the team that we have this year and the experience that everyone brings to it.
And this is our secondary team, which also includes Tanya Donahue, Ben Lance, and Heidi Gregory. And what's really nice about our secondary team is we are also teaching in the content area and can help our students succeed and interact with our colleagues to help students not only in ESL, but other classes that they may be taking.
This is a little bit of a change from prior years. At our elementary, we had just 2 certified teachers and a lot of instructional aid support. And we really, Dan really took the lead with Dan and Nikki, changing the model and providing all certified staffing who's doing the servicing to our students. Funding wise, just so you guys know, we do get a little bit of categorical funds to support EL. We get a little bit in our federal Title III, very little, like $25,000. And then we get a little bit in what's called 41A, also less than $100,000. And when you think about this population of students, they need additional supports to access the school, to access all components of it. These guys have separate curriculum they use with our students. We do, like we said, the translating skills, all of those things. And so that then all comes, because those categoricals don't cover it all, that just comes then out of general funds for us.
So that was a change this year from.
Yeah, and Nick, you were gonna touch base on that also, but just to thank the board and Dr. Van Wagner to kind of see the need as far as, it was a huge transition. We had 2 EL elementary teachers in previous years and aid support, and as far as contact hours with students, the state only recognizes those contact hours that certified teachers have. So although we were still servicing kids with aid support, it didn't actually fall within the requirements of the state. So we, like Jesse mentioned, we have put more funding towards our EL program through at-risk and general fund, so that now we have teachers with caseloads that are manageable. Like, we wanna keep those caseloads right around 30-ish. They're a little higher, especially with Nikki at Traverse Heights with that population, but we find 1 teacher at 1 location is better than splitting the population up. But we've made huge strides, so we appreciate your support.
I have a question. For the kids that are, that is their first language, and then English is their second, do they ever go on and major into that language? Literature as well as the language? I mean, if you come in speaking Russian, it just opens up all the Russian literature to you. You don't have to translate. So I'm wondering if we're able, do we encourage them basically to piggyback off of what they already have?
We definitely leverage home language support, and that is up to each individual family if they continue to pursue an education in their native language. I don't have a specific scenario to share where a student has majored in their home language.
I was just kind of curious.
Yeah.
You know, I had a friend, I knew people that were bilingual in quite a few languages. And I had one friend that was getting her master's in French because she wanted to be an interpreter at the UN, and you have to be fluent in 6 languages to do that. So Pansy had 5 and was going for her 6th. And by fluent, it means she could be in one language and move just very fluidly right into another. And just, it was just amazing. So I was kind of wondering, you know, you kind of see a lot of times immigrant families shut down one language to only let the language most commonly spoken be the dominant language. And I'm kind of hoping that we encourage kids also to keep what they have.
Absolutely, and some of our students, for example, will attend Ukrainian school in the evening or even maintain status as Ukrainian students virtually in the evening.
Some of our 5th graders, as they're selecting their electives for middle school, also get very excited if they're Spanish speakers to take Spanish classes. So, I mean, that is a language that we can very easily support. That, and I wanted to come back to the teaching model changes that Jesse and Dan mentioned. Another thing, just from my perspective, aside from the more contact time with students. It's also allowed us to attend all staff professional development in meetings of the buildings that we're working in. And so something that's been tremendously helpful for me is I am now able to work with a lot of the gen ed teachers at Traverse Heights, especially as we roll out CKLA. Having that contact time instead of being at 5 buildings instead of 1, that's been really helpful. And then you can see from here, one of our goals is really to hone in on helping our students feel connected at their local buildings. And so even little things like before we couldn't require assistants to attend parent-teacher conferences, for example, or Eastern does a carnival and Traverse Heights has a fancy dance. These are opportunities now that we're not spread so thin that we're able to attend. We will be able to attend parent-teacher conferences and some of those extra school events and help make sure that our families are engaged in them. So aside from being more compliant with having more certified ESL teachers, we're also just gaining a lot more time in our buildings, which I think will certainly benefit our students and their families. And then speaking of CKLA, that's been another tremendous help in giving our department direction because a lot of our teachers right now are kind of in lockstep on rolling out CKLA. We have 2 areas that really support English language learning. There are parts embedded right into the Gen Ed CKLA curriculum that really give helpful tips for all levels of English language proficiency speakers. So something I might do at Traverse Heights is take all of the kindergarteners and work on that particular lesson that they're also getting in their general education class. And then they also have a separate component that supports CKLA that we're starting to get oriented with called Language Studio. And so we have that this year that we're trying to work with too to help support and supplement that. And then the final change that we've made is, and this is a big thanks to Dan and Jesse and the board for supporting this, but we have a new software system that allows us to communicate better with general education teachers what the language needs are of our students. So the WIDA test is something that we are required annually to give, but it spits out numbers that can be really nebulous to someone who doesn't have an extensive background in teaching ESL. So we purchased a software system called EduSkills that was created by a former head of ESL for Oklahoma City Public Schools. And basically it allows us to tell teachers what those numbers mean and what English language development standards they're tied to. So that has been a tremendous help. It also allows us to put in any WIDA accommodations, M-STEP accommodations, so that those are gonna follow students, especially as they transition from 5th to 6th grade, so that our secondary teachers don't have to backtrack and figure out, hey, like what supports were these students getting? So that has been incredibly helpful purchase for our program. It saved us a lot of time, and especially our general education teachers. It's given them a clear picture of what students need quickly. And then I just wanted to share at the elementary level our department goals. So we're really trying to help boost that student achievement, and it's really, really possible and tangible now with CKLA. So we're really locking down into that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, our objective as a department, we're really looking for ways to boost that family engagement. So that bilingual Google attendance form, and then we'll be meeting more to discuss what are other ways we can really connect our families at the local school level. What are ways we can really engage with them and get them what they need so their students feel like a part of this community, even if language is a significant barrier.
One other question, it kind of blends across not just foreign language, but to English as well. What do you do when we have so many forms, but people are basically illiterate in whatever language the form is in? How do we deal with that?
Well, we're lucky that some of us are bilingual, so like, for example, if a student enrolls and they're unable to read the enrollment form, like they can pull a teacher who's bilingual to go read it to them, but we also have iPads that you can take a picture and it will read it out loud, and that's true even with CKLA students who are really fluent in their first language but not literate. Sometimes we use that to really help boost comprehension, so I feel grateful to be teaching this in 2025 when we have so many technologies that assist with that process, but it's not, even though that we encounter that, it really hasn't been a barrier for our families. We have enough bilingual adults in our community to really help get what we need done.
To read.
Mhm.
And we've done, I know Jesse can speak in more detail about communications, but we've done a lot on the communications end to make sure everything that we have frontward facing for our families can be interpreted in some way, shape, or form. So for instance, we moved all of our schools over to S'more newsletters. S'more is a software, and you can, every newsletter that goes out, you just drop down and can interpret. So we're aware of that, everything that's out on our web or any form we have, we continue to work on making sure that it's translated.
And we mark, these guys help us mark and find families who only read in their native language, so when they get communication pushed through our Power School, through our SIS, it goes and we have a tag in which their communication comes through in the language in which they read. It's already set for that, so we've got that sort of in play too.
What languages are y'all bilingual in?
I speak Spanish and English. I used to be a Spanish teacher at West. And then another one of our elementary ESL teachers also speaks Spanish. And then we have noticed Ukrainians are our second most represented language. A lot of our Ukrainian parents are either learning English or are very literate in Ukrainian, and so they don't necessarily face the same challenges that some of our other language families do. And Amanda can speak for secondary, yeah.
Yes, I also speak Spanish, and we have several staff members at East Middle School that speak Spanish as well.
And Russian and Ukrainian, I think, are pretty kinship tied.
Yeah, they are, and we have a junior kindergarten aide at Traverse Heights that speaks Ukrainian, and then Elitsa, our longtime liaison, she really knows everyone, so we call on her a lot too.
Thank you.
Looking at what we offer at the secondary level, it is a little different at the middle school versus the high school. At the middle school, I have 2 ESL sections, which are organized by grade level or proficiency level, and the same is true at West Middle School. So 2 sections, putting our newcomers, students that are new to learning English in a section, and then higher level students that require different needs in another section. The middle school teachers, we also have a time on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays called seminar that we're able to support our content area teachers or work with students individually with different reading interventions or fluency, or take a look at a teacher's lesson plan and see how it may become more accessible for our EL learners. At the high school level, they also they have something similar. They have a section with class, a multi-grade class, as well as a part of their day to help support content area teachers to help with success in those classrooms. Our curriculum is new. This is our second year using it, is the National Geographic Learning. So there is a unique curriculum for English language learning that is different than an ELA class. We focus on English language acquisition to help with content mastery in the classroom. And it offers 5 different options, and so we look at a student's proficiency level and what would best fit that student's need when we're developing curriculum. We also, as I mentioned, look for where students need comprehensive support in other parts of their day or even outside of their school day to make sure that they're engaged in the school and the community. We work with our colleagues in the LEAP office to see how we can help enroll them in sports, our clubs, our other activities, or even attend school events such as the homecoming dance that we just had.
Excellent. I'm just curious about that National Geographic Learning curriculum. So if this is the second year, what was the feedback like from the teachers year one?
It's a very engaging curriculum. It uses authentic resources to draw students in. It's really comprehensive with listening, speaking, reading, and writing. It also has an online Spark platform, which complements what we're doing in the classroom and allows us to really tier out needs that different students have when you're working with multi-grade level students. That's really important that you have a curriculum that is going to allow some personalization. Students find it very engaging, and it also does a really nice job of supporting the content areas.
Great. And I just have one more question about these sections at the secondary level.
Sure.
That constitutes their ELA?
It does not.
Oh, so it's an elective?
Correct.
Okay. So that does have some implication for them, like in terms of they have one other elective to pick a STEM or an arts class or whatever.
Absolutely, and at the middle school, for example, with higher level students, we have some flexibility with our scheduling. For example, I have a student that just sees me on A days instead of B days because the student wants to play in the orchestra. And so we make that happen. There is flexibility.
And at the high school, our students still are required 2 credits in world language, but a lot of times we will see these students earn those 2 credits because they have that proficiency in their home language, right? And so they're able to like not have to necessarily take that additional world language class because they have the proficiency in this. There are ways in which we call it a PC at the high school, a personal curriculum we're able to write for these students that can fulfill that Michigan merit requirement, so.
Which makes perfect sense.
It does make sense, yeah.
Yeah, Dan and I just
We get it
really.
every once in a while.
We got that one right, Beth, the state did. Yeah, Dan and I just really wanted you guys to meet Amanda and Nikki. We wanted to kind of give them a little kudos. This is the first year we've had some EL leadership. They're teacher leaders that receive a small stipend to help us just organize and make sure we're supporting teachers. I mean, this program, we're talking about 5% or so of our student population, but they're very vulnerable, right? They need a lot of support. We have to make sure we're intentional about what does it look like K-12 for that support? How does it change? How do we, I mean, Nikki's right, how do we build relationships with these families, right? How do we build trust and how do we make them feel welcome when language and not having that language is such a barrier? And so we've done a lot of work this last year led by these guys to reorganize it and make sure the teachers have the resources they need. And we just thought it was worth us bringing it to the board and making sure you guys are aware of the work that's happened behind the scenes, so.
I think it's great. One last question, forgive me. And that is, do we in any place in the curriculum include, is it Anishinaabe?
Anishinaabe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is our Indigenous education program. That's a work in progress. So I've been working with Lydia and working with Tribe because we received a grant recently to include that in our curriculum. So we're trying to figure out, we had this program, about 15 years ago at the middle schools where we had Anishinaabe 1 and 2. And that has since gone away, but now we have the grant to bring it back. So we're just trying to figure out the format and what that looks like. I've also talked to some people at Michigan Virtual to see if they could help us build out a class that can be supported by the Tribe here, Grand Traverse Band.
I think that's great, because I'd hate to see it be a dead language.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's a different conversation for another day. I know y'all will keep us
But
posted on that in
somehow
progress.
it's in that language.
Yes, absolutely. I hate to talk dollars and cents, but have to think of the finance side of things too. So with the changes this year, you mentioned, and I concur, that the state and federal funds are minimal, and the rest will have to come from the general fund. So what would the district have to, offset that with?
Well, it depends, I guess, how you look at it as far as offsetting what our original program was with teacher aides. I'm gonna give you some approximate numbers here. So we had to offset what we were paying in teacher aid. We took that money and then hired FTE. So that was a 1-for-1. Beyond that, we probably added just a little more than another FTE, which we had to take out of a combination of at-risk. We're probably looking at about 150 grand.
I consider that a well-spent risk.
Between that and general fund. But there is again, going back to state of Michigan, there's a level of compliance we have to hit. And previously, we weren't near that.
I understand,
So-
it wasn't a choice.
It really wasn't. I think we had to right the ship. We all recognized it,
And we just don't know what pot right now that comes out of.
right, because
You know,
as of right now, we don't
As we
have.
sit here right now, I couldn't tell you.
I would say FTE wise, we have about, I think it's 6.6 or 6.5 FTE teaching staff. And so if you guys kind of do the multiplier of what an FTE is approximately 110, does that sound about right? And I would say between our 41A and our Title III, which we're allowed to spend on that, I mean, that maybe covers 1.5 FTE. So the rest of it, and then that doesn't even count curricular resources, the edu skills that Nikki talked about, release time, like things that we know that our teachers need to be prepared to serve these kids. That's a little bit above and beyond what our general education teachers need. And then Dan and I just kind of, like as Dr. Rand Wagner said, just try to look at the pots of money and figure out what can we access. At risk is a great one. We don't know what's in there though. It's like this unknown. But it's a great one for us to try to support that.
Great, thanks so much for being here today and helping give us this overview of the program.
And they're gonna depart back to their classrooms, so thank you.
Thank you.
Good work.
Keep up the great work.
Thanks so much.
Okay, we're moving on to our discussion item on the Talented and Gifted program, otherwise known as TAG. I'm going to defer again to Dan Keisworth.
And I'll kind of just start out with, this is a conversation that is really now precipitated by the move of Central Grade. So as you all know, our TAG program has been housed for many years at Central Grade. And with us vacating Central Grade and coming in this building next year, we knew that we didn't have quite enough room for our preschool and our TAG programs to stay housed in here while the 3-year construction phase is going on at Central Grade. So the conversation that we've had is, where would we have room in the district to be able to house the TAG kids while that 3-year construction phase is going on? So that's the first thing that we've had to do. And so we've looked at a lot of different options, which includes even funding with title and buildings and all those things. And at this point, we are prepared right now looking at having 2 classes at Eastern Elementary and 2 at Silver Lake Elementary. Is our plan as of right now. And that we have room at both. We will have a preschool classroom at Eastern that we're going to have to figure out where that goes. We're looking at different options with that. But those are the 2 right now that create that, and that creates, just because of space right now, an east and a west side TAG program. The question from there is, after the 3 years, then what? One of the things that's also in play is that the architects right now are figuring out number of classrooms and space to be redesigned at Central Grade, and so they're asking us the question of how many. And this is a conversation I've had with most of the, if not all, board members over the last couple of years. There's been an idea. We had a public comment this morning about trying to create some type of equity. And so we have had that conversation about, do you create more opportunity if you have something on the east side and the west side of town? Transportation is still an issue, but if you can get a kid into the busing boundaries of Silver Lake or Eastern, it is a little easier. And in the future, if we had more bus drivers, which we've struggled with for many years now, so I don't want to give a false hope, but if there was, we could try and figure out maybe some type of transfer system from our middle school, so we could have kids ride the secondary routes in the morning and then be a shuttle to each of the sites. Again, not possible right now at all with our bus driver situation, but maybe, just maybe in the future, that's something that could be considered if we wanted to do that. So the conversation this month needs to happen at the board Just of a notification of what our plans are for the construction period. But it also now needs to really be determined after that 3 years, what that looks like. And so I know that talking to board members and having this on there, there's some different data points and things that were asked. We were able to put together what we were able to over the weekend with that. So with that, I'll kind of kick it off to Dan and kind of run with the conversation here where the committee wants to go, so.
Yeah, so we just started with just a general overview. I think we're all aware of most of these things. 4 sections of TAG, 2 fourth grade sections, 2 fifth grade sections have been traditionally what we've done over the past several years. I don't actually remember a program that didn't run this way. Admission to TAG is based on the COGAT score as well as NWA scores and teacher input. So as mentioned by our public comment today, we have a COGAT test that's given to third graders. I thought we did a pretty good job, and I guess we can look at how to promote this even more, but as far as getting it out to school newsletter, social media posts, press releases, we try to make this as many people aware of this test as possible, because we know, and Kelly does a lot of the makeup testing, that any testing we can't get done during that testing window in February, they're just one-off tests and it's quite time intensive, so.
For clarification, Dan, those tests happen at the home school of the child, correct?
They do. Yeah, so that's during February, we do about a month of sign up. Students will sign up, sometimes we have several students outside of the district, Pathfinder, Woodland, Trinity Lutheran, schools like that wanna come in and test. We assign them to the Old Mission, Leland.
Yeah.
We assign them to their closest school, they come in that day and test with those students. Go through the process, keeping in mind, COGAT is kind of a test that looks at that reasoning, not necessarily like specific questions they're doing actual math or language arts problems, right? They're looking for patterns. It's looking more towards that IQ based. 3 parts of it that we give: verbal, quantitative, and nonverbal. We really, when we're looking at who gets, as far as trying to figure out the best cut scores for TAG, we really focus on that quantitative and verbal. The quantitative math portion, essentially, and I've discussed this before, I think in individual conversations, but as they go through, we talk about how certain subjects are accelerated or they're enriched, right? The math is actually accelerated, so when they leave TAG, they're moving into 7th grade math going into middle school. So they cover 3 years of math in 2 years.
Dan, do we set what the line is, the cutoff line for the invitation to go into TAG? Or is that set by the overall whatever there might be?
No, we set it on, originally on numbers, right? We know that we have 2 sections, we have 60 spots. So we start for 60 spots unless we see like maybe an anomaly in the testing where we see an abundant amount of students who national percentile and COGAT and NWA line up that we think we could support another section, we would do so. But traditionally what we do is we take those first 60, and what we usually see is that when we usually invite people that might be outside the percentile that usually would maybe struggle successfully in an actual gifted program, right? So we usually invite more, I think, as far as a gifted program goes, that might be able to actually excel in the program. We haven't had a spot where we look at it and we go, we need to open another section because we have this many that are 99th percentile on their winter and on their spring NWA, right? We haven't been in that spot yet.
Like an A group that are the top test scorers, and then you have like a B group that you can dip down to, right?
Yes, we have a yes, a waiting list, and a no is what we generally go with. And they have to accept, and like public comment said, and there's a lot of factors that go into accepting the TAG, right? They have the score, and then I'll show in some stats here coming up that even though they're invited, there are a lot of students that don't attend to stay at their own school, and then what they decide to do then is move into 7th grade math when they get into middle school. So they stay caught up, whether that's in the classroom, that's during summer work, but regardless, if they qualify for the COGAT in elementary, that qualification they can use that to then skip 6th grade math during their middle school years.
But then they do that on their own, basically, to prepare for the
They do,
seventh grade
yeah, or they have, so,
transition.
yeah, and there's some schools that have pockets of enough kids in it, or in any school actually in fifth grade, right, where there's a differentiation that takes place, where the teacher can then help, move the students along. Is that 100% in every school with every student? It's hard to say as far as the number of students that have that differentiation going on in pockets, but there is a large component where we would have teachers, as a middle school principal, we'd have parents come in and say, we'd like our child to take seventh grade math, and then we would have pretty much a packet of supports a teacher would give us to help them throughout the summer so they would be ready.
Yeah, that is my concern with TAG. And that is that I can see where it's great, if you can move faster, you'd rather move faster than sit there and be bored. I understand that 100%. However, then somebody like John Hattie comes along and says you need that mix of kids that moves the whole classroom in. And, there were a couple of schools where it was giving the numbers tested, the ones offered a position, and then the ones who actually took the TAG opportunity. And you could maybe only have a third of the kids that were offered the opportunity who actually took it. And so, again, how that plays out. And then another question that I had, that I didn't see in the material was great, thank you, was, does it impact at all, when you look at the overall testing scores, are you factoring the TAG student scores into Traverse City's overall NWEA and those
for sure,
scores? So,
yeah, they're factored in the central grade scores.
But then-
And our
And the
overall
district-wide,
TCAPS
yeah.
score, yeah.
but then when you look at independently the different schools, comparatively, are some of those schools just a little bit lower simply because their TAG students are pulled out?
Yeah, I think there's some of that happens. I think you see it more on the central grade side. And when we look at data with central grade, right, and they do data meetings there, and they look at their fifth grade data, they separate it out, right, as far
Yeah,
as
I was
that.
gonna say, we
Right,
used to
absolutely.
take that data out.
But to give you an idea of an inverse from a resource standpoint, if this does go out of central grade, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but I know we've had this conversation, central grade is close to becoming a full Title I school.
Yes, yeah,
So there are more resources that come with a full Title I school, like Blair and Traverse Heights have.
And we ran numbers with Silver Lake and it wouldn't pull them out of title.
So-
Silver Lake would still be eligible. That was one of our concerns. Right now, Silver Lake is a partial title school. And if the free and reduced percentage were to change, if we add
100,
anywhere from 50 to
110.
60 kids, could be like one section each, right, of the TAG over here. Sandy ran some numbers in it and it did not, so. that
yeah,
was-
and it looks like a third of the kids in TAG, not a third, 15%. 15%
Free and reduced.
are free and reduced.
So, that's why looking at the sites is like, it's a bit of a science of figuring out from a resource, of federal funding, of all those things. So that's a big part of where we landed, especially with the West Side school, is Silver Lake was that fit. And you also look at, the reality of trying to bring people in. So, the two schools, Silver Lake is kind of that center of the hub of Blair, Westwoods, Long Lake, that fit, and then Eastern, we really don't have, and with our growing population, Traverse Heights is packed to gills. Obviously, we're adding 3 classrooms. Long Lake, the amount of building and housing that's going up there right now, with apartments especially,
That's scary.
is big. At that point, Cortez, obviously the far edge of the district, so that's where the landed on the 2 buildings we did for the program, and also looking at those resources, federal and state.
Would you be able to consider someplace like Blair, which has more open classrooms? Are they solid enough
Yeah,
that it wouldn't undercut the funding.
I think the
that we're
problem
seeing.
is that they're on so far the edge of the district that a lot of people won't select it because they may be coming to work in town. Again, because you're looking at transportation. So those far edges of the district generally struggle. I'll give you an example of where that's been done and help me out history-wise. But there was a international baccalaureate program that was trying to interlock in the elementary school. Really struggled to get enrollment from that standpoint.
Bertha Voss.
And then they moved
Bertha
it
Voss
to-
as well.
yeah.
They tried the far two extremes and it
And
didn't
it
have
just
success.
didn't work, yeah.
Yeah.
To the east side, I mean, Cortate would be another option, they have room. But again, if we talk about the same idea as equity, right, as far as when Dr. Van Wagner mentioned the idea of maybe using some type of middle school busing or some type of shuttle service, if we go to that route eventually, that makes it even harder to accomplish that the farther out those schools are.
That's our struggle, that's our geography struggle, that as TCAPS we have that a lot of other places do not.
Yeah. The only other one I think the west side one was Silver Lake being right in the middle of Willow Hill, Long Lake, Westwoods. I mean, that's a really great spot on the west side. On the east side, I just want to acknowledge Eastern is still very far north. So Traverse Heights to me would be a little bit.
But we just don't have, we don't have room, and we're already, struggling.
We keep adding to
Right.
Traverse Heights.
And we're running out of
yeah.
space in that direction really, from that point, so.
I thought we were at
It's-
capacity with Easter too, but if we pull out, and I did wanna ask, this is just a logistical thing, potentially financial, but with Eastern and Silver Lake for that matter, is there going to be any cost in retrofitting rooms, like particularly converting a preschool to a fourth or fifth grade?
No, you would have the opposite with bathroom and stuff, but no. Cause what we'll do is we'll just shift younger kids into those and then we'll have kids, because by law, like on our 2-story buildings, you have to have your younger kids on the first floor.
Okay.
So we would just shift that down, and so, that's a challenge but we're working on. We've talked with the board about the future of Oak Park, right there, as well as in the long run, to be able to have that early childhood center concept that also helps that cause that you're with Eastern, so in the 3 years, yeah, it could cause a little bit, but we're committed to not have, like, there's one classroom there that's a library currently at Eastern that we wanna maintain. So we'll figure out, we're trying to work with our ISD partners on possibly, we had a preschool at Oak Park previously, and took it out, so is that maybe an option? So we've got our work cut out for us to figure that out, but we'll figure that out.
Okay, so it's just one preschool classroom at Eastern that would have to be?
One's already, we're down one this year already, and so it'd be one more preschool classroom that would, be at a different site, there to be able to have the younger kids go into that and open up those 2 older kid classrooms.
Okay, so just to be clear, if we don't have space at Oak Park, what are other alternatives and what are the financial implications to the district? Like, we're looking at renting space? Just
Could be.
wanna be very proactive and
Could be,
transparent here.
could be, we have space at Central High School there that's where the robotics was a possibility. So there are multiple options there to look at. We're not that far yet. This is, we kind of need a decision, and long-term where the board goes also kind of might play into this, of how we go of a plan of attack with it.
And another thing I think we have to think about, and that is, how do you handle the traffic? That would be a problem, I think, more at Traverse Heights. If you had a lot of people bringing their kids, picking their kids up.
I'll just be honest with you, it's a struggle no matter what building we're in. Right now, we have a lot with, with our buses pretty packed because of the lack of
Blair's
drivers.
is easier, cause you have
Agreed.
bus.
I would, to be clear, would love to be able to figure out a way to have more at Blair and Cortade, just that is a geographic challenge that is really, really hard for us to figure out, And as the board knows, we've limited our school of choice down, like almost to nothing at our city schools, to make sure that we can maintain and be able to, do this. The other thing too, Josie, is that from a preschool standpoint, going out to those elementaries is also adding another preschool. It may be a little bit of a hike for folks, but it would still be an option and an opportunity at that standpoint to be able to do, as well as kind of a plan C, if we can't get it closer to town from that standpoint as well for that other preschool classroom.
Yeah. Could you just remind us, like, what are the legal obligations in terms of preschool? So if you live within the boundaries of Eastern Elementary, you wanna enroll your kids there K through 5.
But you do not necessarily, if you do from that standpoint, obviously you have that right, but if you have kids in preschool and you live outside of that boundary, you have no automatic right to that building.
Right, but within boundary, I mean, are you, by law entitled to a spot at a
No.
preschool at that building? So,
No, we're not required to offer
yeah,
preschool
okay.
in any building.
Okay, I just wanna be clear.
It's really an
So-
ISD program that we host, for, that coordinates it and that we host and do get the funding for. And we wanna obviously do that as much as possible.
Yeah.
But from that standpoint, we are not obligated, from that standpoint, we are obligated to offer it in the district, from that standpoint. Just as
So,
we're
I mean,
not,
we might get some disgruntled parents that we're moving the preschool out of Eastern Elementary. We just have to be aware and prepared
Yeah.
to deal with that.
and hopefully, like I say, we're hoping to be able to have it real close, from that standpoint, convenient, but we're putting our feelers out and getting down that work from that standpoint, but we know we have room in other buildings and places. We'll see where this building for sure lands out, for that. We know we don't have the room for all of the tech, there's no doubt here, but like I say, as we get a little bit closer, those conversations, we'll let the board know. We'll figure out a place for them, and hopefully it's close, but we know we have spaces to add at some of the other elementary schools.
Right, and going back to Oak Park, right from 2026 through 2029.
Yeah.
Is it at full capacity with ISD?
Well, it has been, but that's one of the questions right now they're looking at is they have purchased at their headquarters over on Red Drive by the Commons. They've purchased the other part of Pine Rest. And so they have doing that and staff going in there, so that might free up some staff space. So that's the conversations I'm trying to have right now
Okay.
with them, and they mentioned it. They haven't had the chance to follow up to check back and have that, but like that's one of our hopes right now, but haven't had enough feedback from that standpoint yet to know if that's a viable option. And it may be a year here till they're able to figure that out based on what's happening over there and what they're able to do.
Okay, well, I know this is also on the finance committee
Yes.
agenda for Thursday, so that's why I just keep,
Yeah.
questioning, are there financial implications? It sounds like right now, none are known, but there are potential
Sure.
financial implications, like if the district had to lease space
Correct.
or renovate a space.
Correct.
But,
we, and we probably wouldn't, that would be a very last option if we have classroom space somewhere else in the district at that point. But, right now, it would be minimal of what we believe our first options would be.
okay, and back to the central grade architects, because this has come up a couple of times. So I mean, I know a couple of us are very familiar with that tag space, those 4 classrooms. I thought that they were going to design those to be classrooms no matter what,
No.
whether it's tag or something else. So like on that second floor in that tower area, what would that area be used for if not classrooms?
It would be classrooms, but it would be traditional 3rd, 4th grade, 5th grade
Yeah.
classrooms.
Okay.
So what, right now, I mean, in the budget, it is much more of a limited scope. It's designed, for about the amount of kids that we have now minus a tag. Okay, now, 3rd floor is a question that we've talked about many times. There's no reason the 3rd floor in the future can't be used. We're just not building it out in this phase for that purpose. But it will be renovated, it will be brought up to code, all those kind of things as an option. But right now, there's the amount of actual 1st floor and 2nd floor classrooms is being right-sized to the enrollment of that building minus the tag program is what right now we're running under the assumption of. That's why we're bringing it to the board in that conversation. If we were to do 4 more classrooms, that increases the budget, all those things already for something that if we don't, plan on doing, we don't want that. We're making sure we're also keeping some space for a little bit of growth within town, also making sure that we have space for storage and things for Lars Hockstead that really doesn't have now. So that's kind of the question of, just simply, are you going to spend the money for 4 more renovations of classrooms or not? with that future in mind. And why do that if the board is feeling like it's a good idea to try and create an east and a west side to create more opportunity and those kind of things, again, that is possible, or no, we wanna go back to central grade and leave it as is in the future. That's where we're at that point of decision-making now for the board to give that thought to.
Okay. All right, so now that we've covered the financial and the logistical issues, I think just philosophically, I think, that's the most
Yeah,
important
let's let
part.
Dan go ahead and go through the rest, and there's a lot of data you guys asked for to kind of put into and go from there.
Shout out to Kelly Walter, she helped.
Thank you,
Together.
Kelly.
So just to go through it right now, 98 tag students in the program, that's lower than traditionally what we have. I think a lot of obviously families concerned about what the next building is, and they would have to move 3 different buildings in 3 years if they decided to elect in the tag. Just under 10% for 4th and 5th grade in the district. We talked about some statistics around economically disadvantaged students. Right now, we're about 15%. 504 plans, it looks like there's 2, and then there's 4 with IEPs.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge, what I've observed over the years is that we normally have like up to 110 students.
Yes.
Like 27, 28 per classroom, 55 per grade level. So this is a small probably an outlier year.
For sure, right, like, again, it goes to the idea if they're coming in here 4th grade, right? They're at whatever school they're at, in
Yeah.
3rd grade, 4th grade, different
Right.
school, 5th grade, different school, and then obviously they go to middle school. So it's
Yeah.
actually 4 different schools in 4 years, so
Right,
that's a lot of transition
sure.
to participate in the program itself. So we talk about, I think there were some questions too about what is a price tag or financial commitment for the district to host tag or to have a tag program. As long as our numbers stay close to, that 28 to 30, that's our divider anyway when we do mission-based budget. Now, there is the idea that if you were to take those kids and spread them back out into all their other schools, would that push other schools into a section or push other schools into overload? And I think that's such a year to year. I think as long as the district, we always keep in mind our 27.8, what our divider is. So if we keep it 28 or higher, I think that's fiscally responsible as far as the teacher in front of them.
Because that would have pushed 6 more students out to Willow Hill.
Exactly. And Westwood's also was pretty full too. So that's the idea, right? And from year to year, we could look at every number and every kid, but it doesn't automatically mean that all those schools can absorb 100 some kids and there'll be no extra sections at those schools, right? There's
Or
gonna
split
be
classrooms.
or more
Our-
splits,
Our
right.
favorite popular
Yep.
choice.
Yes.
But then if we'd taken 15 of those kids who didn't go into tag that were offered tag, it might have relieved some of the congestion in those classrooms
It could work
as well.
inversely.
Exactly.
Then we had another section at central grade, and then you get into the numbers, right, where you need a number that's pretty much, we want it to divisible by 28, right? So I used to
Right.
run numbers when we did honors, for instance, at middle school, right, is that we run the number of the section, you have 42 kids, 42 is a number that, fiscally is 21 and 21. So then you want to either fill the section or move down in the section, because 42 is a tough number. So there's some numbers that go into that also to make sure that we're, that responsibility piece with.
I understand.
finances, yeah. So this has been, as far as testing in the district, we were about 22% of our 3rd graders took the test. I know there's been a lot of discussion about taking the test and getting the information out. We do, like Dr. Van Wagner mentioned, we do it at the home school. Try to make it accessible as possible for kids. It's a 3-day, so they do about a half, and we break it up into 3 sections, about a half an hour to 45 minutes a day.
Yeah, and that again is just 1 year of data. We don't know if that's an outlier, pretty average, but
I would say it's pretty average, because
Yeah.
one thing we can do is we can pull, what's tough for our data is that we have to spreadsheet, and I can work with Sophie on this, but the COGAT test and who takes it is stored in the COGAT, that system that we use that supplies us with the licenses for the test. Outside of that, when we talk about who gets in and the different groupings of kids, that starts getting on spreadsheets, and whenever we put anything on a spreadsheet we can't keep in PowerSchool, pulling historical data can be a challenge. It can be done, but like this, for instance, when we compare to past years, we're always around that 25% mark.
And I don't know what the magic number, the ideal number would be for percentages, I don't think I think that's highly subjective or whatever, but I mean, it just does seem to me like 1 out of 5, 1 out of 4, I get technically 1 out of 4.5 students are taking the test. I do think, like the public commenter said, my observation over the years is that not every building or every third grade teacher promotes it the same. So, district-wide communication is great, but that building level newsletter in the weekly email is really, really important for parents. But parents they can't, one mode of communication, it's like, parent can easily miss. But because K through 5 students come home with paper, I know their backpacks are stuffed with paper. Like, the third grade teachers giving handouts. But anyway, this is all just over the years I've heard of, certain building principals and teachers not promoting it as much as others. So just to create equal opportunity for kids, to really reinforce that idea. We wanna give everybody the opportunity to test. There could be kids who are not necessarily doing great in the classroom, but they have hidden talent. They could have that nonverbal side, that spatial, and they could be on the border with the verbal and math, and I just wanna create more opportunities for more kids as part of our equity work.
I just kind of played with some numbers, doing nothing else, I don't watch TV, what are you gonna do?
Right.
So some of our buildings, we test 1 in 20 students. The outliers are, at one school, we teach 1 in 85, and another outlier, we teach roughly, and these are very ballparky.
Yep.
1 in 160. So there's a lot of variance in our testing by building, and I understand all populations aren't the same. I'm the first person.
And resources, I just think there's a lot of parents that go, I don't have the transportation, I don't have
That is
that,
true.
I don't have the interest.
And so they just
Yeah.
don't even
Right.
consider having the kid test. So that's what will be interesting in a study if we do an East and a West. And they go, well, the bus stop's just a mile down the road into, the Silver Lake, boundary. I'd be willing to drop them off there, but I'm not driving them all the way into, Central Grade.
And I do think there are a fair number of students who just don't test their families, whether it's an economic issue or we're just staying within our home school. We're good with
Yeah.
what the elementary schools are doing, and we'll make decisions at the middle school.
We're gonna see a nudge on numbers on less Central Grade students going to TAG next year
sure.
and more Silver Lake because we provide busing. Right, that's the idea.
100%.
I think Central Grade, as you can see in all the stats we have, Central Grade has a pretty high number of kids who test, even kids who test. I know they have a higher population at the school, but you're gonna see that move.
Right.
Because we're no longer having a bus go to Central Grade for
And
TAG, and
there's
Silver
also-
Lake you will, so.
There's a lot
those-
of siblings there too.
and
So
siblings
that
come
brings
in.
kids.
Yeah.
And that's that's been the case since I was in elementary school.
So next one, we did look at, we kind of stacked this one up as far as tested, qualified, accepted, so you get to kind of see that ratio. Always the interesting one here for me is qualified and then actually took the invitation. We saw that was a little more this year than in previous years, where they did qualified and then we had less that accepted as we went down, because every person that was on the wait list got in. So the entire wait list, so if we had our first 60, then we went down to wait lists, and those also were all accepted. So I think that might have been a location or not knowing as far as future buildings.
And did the TAG kids comparably do very similar year to year to year to year? That's the case,
As
so
far as scoring
even if
goes?
you,
Yes.
even if you end up with most of your kids coming off the wait list, those kids continue to shine pretty much in that.
Yes, as far as going for again, the concern is math again, as far as going down the wait list, when we talk about qualifying, I mean because the last thing you wanna do is have a kid in the program that ends up not liking school anymore because the math is so hard. So if we go back to like what, because you mentioned this, Josie, just as far as verbal, quantitative, nonverbal. That quantitative score is one of our biggest measures of the three, so we just don't, even if a nonverbal might be through the roof, the problem is that it doesn't equate out. And the tag teachers that help us during this process have been doing this, for years, and we do have a turnover, and we're bringing those other teachers into these meetings as far as how we qualify for tag. I mean, they can see it crystal clear as far as those scores go and who's gonna struggle and who's not.
And they're very open, at their open house too, about
Yes,
that, right?
yeah.
Like,
Do you have any data on retention?
As far
Like, how
as
many kids complete tag? How many kids?
fourth to fifth, I would,
Yeah.
just talking to teachers, I say we're well over 95%. It is like this year, I think we have one student who, went from 4 to 5, and again, we're struggling with the math component. Went back to a fifth grade classroom in Central Grade.
Okay,
So that's generally what we see, it's either,
yeah.
most of the time it's none, it's like 100%. They start in fourth grade. Now, how that moves up, I mean, you had some questions about national merit, that's a tough one to track as far as going back and, cause those aren't even marked in Power School, we'd have to go actually back on social media and backtrack 5 to 6, 7, 8 years to see that kind of connection. Maybe secondary could talk a little more about it, but what we see, what I kind of point to is what is our geometry number at? Cause in theory, a tag student, the one class that they would come through if they're advanced a year is they would take 8th grade geometry. And those numbers would indicate maybe that we do see a dip, right? I think our geometry numbers, I'm gonna speak too far off what the actual data is here, but I'd say our geometry at West and East right now are probably low 20s.
West Middle's higher than East is, but
Yeah.
yeah, because the split isn't 50-50.
It's not, but.
Yeah.
so that's
Anyway,
one
that
indication
retention,
that they come through.
I had asked for that, I mean, you know.
The 4 to 5
seriously,
retention is,
But I think it's important to when the district selects rising fourth graders for this program, how good of a predictor are those co-get scores for success? And one metric would be, well, it's like matriculation, do they graduate from the tag program? And so if it's between 95 and 100%, I think that's just good for the board to know that this program is.
We don't have a lot of kids dropping out between fourth and fifth grade.
Yeah.
and some data just to show that. So this is at 3 years of NWA where we see vast majority, high average. Same thing with ELA, a little bit different. We still have the vast majority in high and high average, and then proficiency for M-STEP as far as math and ELA mirrors that. I think it's a 96 last year and then a 99 in ELA last year.
Yeah, and that 2% would probably be one kid, right? And 4% two kids, so very, very small numbers, and that's just on the ELA side. Yeah. No, I'm really glad that we got this data, it's very telling.
And then and then historical also to kind of look at that east-west as far as students who tested, so I just, added them up after we went through every school, just to give you an idea of our split, the idea of splitting east and west, and what that could look like. Central grade's a tricky one, right, because Central grade is in theory an east side school, but they can see West Middle, so we have a ton of kids open enroll in general, right? West is a bigger building. West is about 300 kids bigger than East. They actually hold the same amount, right? They're both built for about 1,500. But a lot of those kids are obviously right there on the line or downtown. And then we actually see a little bit of influx, I think, back to Central. Because again, that's closer to them as far as schools go, so.
But we've limited that down the last 2 years.
A ton.
So that'll,
So what you're saying is, sorry,
No, you're good.
in that definition of west, you're not counting what grade school or elementary school they went to at the time they took
I
this?
split up, what I did is, cause generally what we see from Central grade, just from a middle school, is when we see those, that's one of those schools that we pretty intently as far as enrollment goes. Especially with tag, cause we start to build out our 7th grade section, then we have to mix them in with other 7th graders. Is that we try to figure out how many are going to east and how many are going to west, and usually it's right around a 60-40. So when I did these numbers, I took the Central grade and just bumped it 60-40 to kind of see where they're coming from. It's general the trend that we see 60% of those go to west and 40% head to
Yeah,
east.
I just looked up your geometry numbers, you have 42 at West Middle School and 21 at East Middle School, so it's almost
That's a
spot
big-
on.
Yeah,
Okay,
two things.
and then what about Montessori, how did they get counted, west or east side?
I split them.
Okay,
I split 'em,
50-50,
yeah,
and
'cause they're open
Blair
enrollment.
as well?
Blair, I also split 6
Okay.
and 6, yeah.
Okay,
Blair actually is, I could have probably done an 8 and 4, cause generally there are
West side
more,
or-
it's more east side kids at Blair actually than,
From the interlocking.
I see more.
okay,
From the east side,
yeah.
interesting.
So I mean, obviously that breakdown here, it makes it look like, a west side kid is more likely to test for
Mhm.
tag than the east side, and
Well, not necessarily, because if you look at the numbers, especially of Eastern Elementary, they had a lot of kids test and qualify and not go.
right.
That's
So
This is
like,
tested, not attending, right here, this is testing, just testing, not
Right.
attending.
Oh,
And
okay, I'm
I
sorry,
think
you're right.
again, it could be, it's gonna be interesting when we split to see if these numbers hold. I think it's gonna actually, it might move back to a more of a 50-50 cause the idea of location
Right,
with the central grade and the west side with West Middle is, that's a family flow, right? That's a flow that's happened historically over years.
Yeah.
Is how they move through the open enrollment.
It kind of brings us back to one of Diane Arnold's points though, and that is whether you wanna have more sessions of tag spread throughout the district. So, we're doubling it right now if you go east and
No,
west.
You're not.
no.
Dividing.
Two on one, two on the
Splitting.
other.
Splitting.
Exactly, but
Same
you're
number
doubling-
of sections.
Yeah, but I'm talking geographically. You're going from one location
To two
to
locations.
two
Correct.
locations, I'm
Correct.
sorry, what I
Yep,
meant.
yep,
yeah,
I know, I'm hard to follow.
you're right.
And then, do we have enough possibility to maybe even split it before in
It's something to
time
look at.
for schools?
And that's something that could, like, we've talked about that possibility, future down the road. And if you had one that you did centrally located back at central grade, there will be room for one class, from that element, that,
You
and
don't have
that's.
enough to fill a classroom.
No, but history has told us no, but we'll see when this happens, and if that happens, it's a conversation that the administration board will just have to tackle. But there's no indication that tells us that there's enough demand for that, but if there is, then you'll look at that.
Or we could structurally adjust the elementary to fit students' needs. Right, there are other options to fit a student's academic
And we're
needs
actually talking about
outside
that
of
right now.
tag.
Is there some ways, so, I informed the board in my update that, we had Kate, had the chance to go with us from Long Lake to a competency-based, and there was some interesting conversation about a couple of schools there that are running some split multi-age, kind of like Montessori does, but allowing kids to maybe move at their own pace, and maybe is there a way to advance in math, especially with that? So I think that there's some things we wanna look at, also just innovation-wise, to see if part of our goals of raising our metrics, to raise that bar, and is there ways, to do that are even innovative yet, that's in one yet model, and could we do that, and like, we were excited about, Long Lake would be a great candidate for maybe something like that allows us something like that. We'll see.
And when you look at Willow Hill again, with 20 students, you only have to take, 6 more kids from the outside, and you could fill it right there.
Of the
at
students
Willow-
that tested, yeah.
Yeah.
And Willow Hill, our biggest struggle is we're very much size-wise locked, and we're landlocked.
Yeah,
so
that's
like-
the bear.
Like, there's, that's a hard
That's the
spot with that
bear.
building,
Yeah,
so.
well, like Traverse Heights is
Right.
kinda.
Well, at least we had some room to expand that, we don't have like,
Well, you've expanded.
you would have to
what you
add a
had.
whole lot of dirt to a hill, or cut one down, or, there's some logistic challenges there.
well, for what it's worth, I just have to say, the district might be looking at this because it's forced to right now with the central grade school, but for what it's worth, this is a dream come true for me. This is something I have advocated for 5 years, that we do have a west side and an east side location. Cause I just know firsthand how many families really, they struggle with transportation. they just can't make it work with their work schedules. They've just given up that opportunity for their kids who got into tag to drive to Central Grade every day. Other families might like physically have to sell their house and move into the Central Grade district just to give that opportunity to their kids. And that's kind of drastic. So I just think this is going to not just preserve, but potentially grow.
Yeah.
And it, the data tells a great story right now and in the future. That will be the proof in the pudding, but I think it's gonna be really exciting to see what can happen here.
I just wanna stress, agreed. It's still not quite maybe what everybody would want with transportation wise, you do have to get into a bus stop of, those two buildings to be able to do it. Again, find a way to find more bus drivers in the future, there's an ability to have a conversation on something that's more shuttle wise, but it does at least give you at least one more busing area, to be able to drop off into to consider.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, we have a tier system for helping kids that are having a hard time struggling. Do we have an ability, and this is just conceptual, no answer, I don't think we're answering definitively anything related to this today. But can we have another tier for the students that are actually needing to move faster? Otherwise, you're going to lose them to boredom. And
Yep, and that was our conversation, the meeting we went to was exactly that.
yes,
Like, how can
that's
we
what
move
I've been
kids at
thinking.
their speed? For some kids need more time, some kids need less time.
And
like,
it can vary
right.
over the course of the year.
Yeah, and so, our
Tricky,
structures,
those kids.
the way they're built of third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, is a little bit anti that personalization. And so, the question is can we, there are districts around the country that are innovating some models that allow less rigidity between grade levels, and it's just a group of kids together, multi-age, that can move at that pace. And so that's what we're interested in piloting, whether something like that could look like, especially when we have splits, can we use splits maybe to our advantage in that way? With some teachers and aides working and have kids not have artificial barriers necessarily of, I may be a third grader, but reading at a fourth grade level, but my math is still at a third grade level. How can we group and re-strategize that? And so that was exactly the cohort of this group, the innovation we're a part of, called the Future Learning Council, and we're gonna continue to look at, are there ways to maybe create that middle between our traditional, our legacy tag? Is there somewhere in the middle here? And we think there might be, so we're gonna look at it.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, and when you think about the old one-room school thing, that ultimately
It was a multi-age,
precisely
right?
what it was. And you had
Original
kids all
Montessori.
over the place, and kids that were very capable, a lot of times, were sub-instructing the other kids.
Sure.
It just moved all over, and it created a different kind of community.
Yep.
An educational community.
So we're gonna take a look at that.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
all right, Dan or Jesse, was there anything more you wanted to add there? Okay, in terms of data. I will share with you all, I did crunch some numbers about the National Merit Scholars this year, but I don't have prior years, obviously. But I can share that of the 4 semifinalists this year, 1 was in tag. Of the 17 commended, 8 were in tag. So that averages out 9 out of 21 kids total, 43% were in tag, just this year. So that's just, if we had any kind of like longitudinal data, like their 8th and 11th grade SAT scores, PSAT scores, it would just kind of show what that long-term investment might yield. And I don't love having just 1 year's worth of data, but I thought that was worth sharing.
Only 43%?
43%
Only.
of the 17 National Merit Scholars, yeah, so just less than half were tag students, but tag students are less than 10% of the whole district, so.
Okay, I'm set.
Little overview, just about the assessment. Nothing here I think that I need to read for you. I think most of you guys are pretty seasoned with the M-STEP, but thought I would include that on here so you have an idea about what the test looks like. Any questions about any of these details here?
No.
A little chart here to let you know again and the public what grade levels are assessed. I think it's pretty clear on the red and the green there. This is a once a year test that's done in the spring for all of our students.
I love the chart.
This is a
It was
good
an easy
thing
way
you
to
should
see
put
it.
into board
Thank you.
packets for new board members.
There you go. I can make really clear charts,
That's
you guys. I'm
helpful.
gonna add that to my
Those for a
resume.
while.
Does have a little holiday flair to it, okay. I'm a big fan of, I agree with you, Josie, trends of data, right? Not looking at 1 year. So this is some trends for you on 4 years worth of data. It's got 5 grade levels across the bottom. There's a lot here. But you can kind of see the proficiency rates in reading over time, different cohorts of kids, and then that red dot signifies where the state average was that year. Again, I think one of the biggest things that, Dan and I wanted the board and the public to know, are we happy when we see a number like 50% of our kids are proficient at reading? Nobody is happy. Nobody wants that. We are well above the state average and the region average, as well. And I would say that M-STEP is an interesting test. As a classroom teacher of 12 years, if I had a test that kids got 50% on all the time, I probably would adjust my test. But that's just me as a classroom teacher,
No, I 100% agree with you on that, having been a classroom teacher.
So,
And something that the curriculum team has discussed, Brittany and I, Jesse, is the 49% at third grade, right? We saw an 8% drop, other grades maintained or grew. So we've been kind of racking our brains to figure out what exactly, obviously with teaching and testing, we have thousands of variables. One thing we did look at is the state as a whole drop for third grade. We did look at the cohort also, because their math also dropped. So if we were to see, like, for instance, an 8% drop in reading, their math goes up or the state would go up, that would mean probably it's not a cohort issue, but we think that there is a relationship here with cohort. And we think, Brittany and I talked about what they received grades 1 and 2 and how they really went down to some, we focused more on foundational reading skills and how that could have impacted them as third graders. We had some feedback from principals, because what they do is they get data back from M-STEP, kind of on the multiple choice, the comprehension items first, and then on the back end of it, they get the writing, and they thought their scores were higher before that writing came in, so. And we've also heard feedback from CKLA that the rigor level right now with writing is far beyond what we've seen in the past, so hopefully that starts to address that and plug that hole.
And we're able to differentiate it from AI.
For third grade, right now. For elementary, we're okay, but we're one step ahead of them, so.
did you wanna say anything about this? I know you had some notes too.
Yeah, so I just think we did some really deep dives into other data sets we had too, and I think for third grade, it's really important to note that people call it the pivot year for a reason, right? Because you're really like taking that opportunity of kindergarten through second grade where you're really focusing on building those foundational skills. And they're really having to be really automatic and incredibly accurate as they make really that complex shift to really like knowledge, like really complex knowledge text, specifically on a summative test like M-STEP. And so if students aren't really fluent in their word recognition skills, that's going to dramatically impact their ability to access the complex text to which they see on state tests such as M-STEP. And so I pulled some Ames Web Plus data for that third grade cohort in particular, and we'll get into Ames Web Plus, I think, in some subsequent sessions. But really, we want to see that oral reading fluency for those students be at the 50th percentile or higher, particularly the 75th, where students can actually make that shift into focusing on making meaning from what they read. And that particular cohort of students had 28% below the 25th percentile in the spring. So a huge chunk of students who are still not automatic and potentially not accurate when they are reading grade level text in comparison to the norm across the nation. So just some other correlation with that particular group of students, which may have contributed, or one of the variables that contributed to that decline or that decrease.
And I will add on 7th grade, right, that's the kind of trend we like seeing. When I pulled apart and was looking at the East Middle School, West Middle School, Montessori's so small, they don't have the numbers to impact. It really was a gain at West Middle School. We've seen East Middle School scores be pretty consistent, but these last few years, West Middle School scores have definitely had a positive trend in that direction, especially for reading. So that's kind of how they're overall trended that way.
So I heard you all attribute, some success to curriculum. What else? I mean, new teachers, professional learning, are there instructional coaches, behavioral coaches, other, inputs that?
Yeah, I think the instructional coaches, so we've changed again, and some of it was based on some at-risk funding that, with budget that we lost, where we've talked about the free and reduced. But as far as structure goes, it may have helped us focus instructional coaching on instruction. Most of our schools, if not all, have a half-time instead of a full-time. And we noticed, like, when instructional coaching started at the district, there was there was a lot of behavior that was included into that, even to the point of, response to behavior, not necessarily even coaching the classroom, but part of behavior response teams. And now that we've moved 100%, Brittany's done a fantastic job of working with coaches. She meets with them on a regular cadence, that they are 100% now doing coaching cycles that are teaching and learning within the classroom. So that's kind of where we shifted. Again, with all the variables that pinpoint everything, we want to see, and when Jesse and I talk about strategic plan and that idea of upward trend, that's where we can, I think, harness all these variables and see an impact. Instead of just saying this does it or this does it,
Right.
Coaching, curriculum, professional learning, organization in the district, efficiencies, communication. These are all the things we're trying to work on, and hopefully those variables together, we see that upward trend.
Wanted to give one nod here to examining that subgroup. Part of this was a test for myself to see if I could pretty efficiently pull the data. Yes, I could, that was good, just so we know, because that's a subgroup. One of the things is, can we pull the data, do we have the reports built? We work with Sophie on that to make sure that we can monitor things, right? So this is just last year's data, right? And I pulled it apart with your economically disadvantaged and your not economically disadvantaged, and then I pulled apart the state in the same exact way. One thing just to give some overview for reading, the state difference between those two groups is about 30% across all of those grade levels. Again, 1 year of data here. Our difference was about 25%. So although our gap exists, it's larger than the board had liked, that Dan and I would like, that I think our principals would like. It is less than the gap at the state. One thing that's interesting though to notice is that our kids who are not economically disadvantaged outperformed the state about 7% last year. But our economically disadvantaged students outperform the state's economically disadvantaged by about 12%. So actually our kids who are in that group, that subpopulation, are not only outperforming the state, but outperforming the state more than our not economically disadvantaged kids are outperforming the not economically disadvantaged kids at the state level.
Which was an interesting in the 3rd grade when we looked into those numbers more deeply, that percentage drop we saw, the majority of that percentage drop was in the not economically disadvantaged. Our economically disadvantaged from 2 years ago to last year's was pretty much on level. It's our not economically disadvantaged that we saw that about a 5 to 6% drop. Just an interesting point that we throw into kind of our thoughts and another variable. Why did that happen and how can we support?
Here's our math data. I will tell you just from an angle of math, we've have continued to look at 4th grade. We know that there are some standards gaps there. You see that's the closest, again, outperforming the state all the years across the board, but you see that 4th grade is like that closest. And that's really that year that they learn the multiplication in 3rd grade. That's the next skill they pick up there in the fall. And by 4th grade now they're doing it across fractions, across double digits. They're expected now to start working on the opposite of multiplication, which is division, which is just, it's a tough concept for kids, so.
it's work with fluency. I know that Erin Sorensen is our content leader for math, and last year she started additional programming just around fluency, as Jesse has mentioned, moving into fourth grade, long division, fractions, not having that fluency just obviously stalls out. So we did see a slight uptick, you know, that 2% we're gonna celebrate, but then again, we're looking for upward trend.
Just curious on both math and reading, how did 2021 look? And I think about that because we were still in COVID, but there was testing. So was that, you know, like similar to the 2022 year?
It was pretty similar. To be honest, I felt like the fifth year made it really crowded. So we went with 4 years of the data for this, so
That's fine, I just wondered if it was significantly different.
was not. Also had the subgroup population here in mathematics. Just a note, again, state difference across all 5 grade levels was about 31%. We were about 25%, so again, our gap is less. Again, our not economically disadvantaged only outperformed about 2% or right at, as you see in some of those areas, as opposed to our economically disadvantaged students who outperform the state at closer to 8%. That's an average across those 5. You see like fourth grade, you're right at where the state was performing there. And then we move on to social studies, which is only assessed in 3 of our grade levels. So you can see those again, how our students performed, and then the state average there. I will tell you, oh, go ahead.
Is that partly curriculum?
Yes, for sure, for sure. And then I would also say 11th grade is a really, if you look at our SAT, like, you know, which is math and reading, writing, which does include non-fictional tests, does include some social studies concepts and ideas and readings and writing from that, I would say, content area and genre. As opposed to M-STEP, our kids, it's very hard to motivate a junior who the M-STEP means absolutely nothing to, besides I have to get this done as part of my requirement. They use the scores for nothing as far as college entry. They're not reported on anything. I was actually sort of surprised that we were close to where the state average was, but yeah, that's a tough one just to motivate kids to make meaning in that. Same with the science.
And it shouldn't be, because right now, there is so much that people are reacting to. And what they're reacting to is built follow, this general area, which means somehow there's not some good communication with discussion that's going on. And that is something I'm hoping we'll look at. Same with science.
Yeah, I would just say,
Science is not what you think
yeah,
it
I
is.
don't know if these
What
data
it
points
is.
are the best to assess our instruction and our curriculum in these 2 disciplines. I would look more towards how are we doing in our AP courses, how are we doing in reading and writing across all of our areas, how are kids making sense of things, just like you were talking about, how are they understanding one historical situation and event and how it might link to another one, right? And how do they use evidence and text to cite sources, those types of things. I don't necessarily know if M-STEP is the best assessment as to how we're doing in those 2 areas. But it's one.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I think you've hinted at this, just, we talked about it last month and months prior about all the testing for the 5th, 8th, and 11th graders in particular. I guess 5th and 8th, because they're taking 4 subjects in M-STEP plus a lot of NWEA. And they take the science and the social studies last, right?
Right.
It's always last. And I have definitely heard kids tell me, not just my own, but like birthday parties, whatever interactions, like, you know, they're just done. And they're like, they just hit multiple choice option number A repeatedly, and then they're done in half an hour. And the kid who's like actually trying to take the test is like, wait, how is everybody done? And, you know, somehow they're also getting the message like, it doesn't really matter. So, I mean, that is, I think, something in terms of messaging from our teachers, like to impart that, hey, just still give it your best shot.
Yeah.
So that we don't look like, you know, we aren't doing a great job with social studies and science.
Statistically, they should mark C.
Dan,
I don't actually know if that's true.
And I don't think it's.
Exactly what stats class did you find that out in? For the record here.
Lots and lots of great stuff to celebrate here, and so Dan and I will flip through some of these for you.
Central, we are highlighting our English language learner program. This is Kathleen Schneider at Central Grade School, doing some instruction with our English language learners.
And then this is a shot from Miss Taplin's math class over at West Middle School, really working on engaging our students, especially during a topic that's mathematics, not necessarily intuitively to be engaged in, so.
Willow Hill, we have some math in action and CKLA. Third graders played long vowel baseball as part of the TCAPS new CKLA curriculum.
Long vowel baseball.
Yes.
Did somebody strike out?
Home runs.
We are really proud this year. We have 4 TCAPS semifinalists. These students are now in the competition to see if they can move on to become finalists. They submit essays, portfolio, their transcript, their counselors do some work. So 4 of those students there and 2 different pictures with, that's Ben Berger. He's not a national merit semifinalist.
This year.
But he does have almost the exact same pose.
Yes.
Those 2 pictures.
Berger's face always looks like he's those roller coaster pics. You know when you get your.
And then at Central High School, we had 5 commended scholars. So these are the students who scored in the top 3% nationally, not quite that top 1 or 0.5% to be a semi, but just an incredible feat for these 5 students here. And then West just had a banner day. I mean, man, they had 12 students who earned that commended scholar. Yeah, what a strong class they have over there. So some familiar faces there, I think, so.
Both schools. And again, half of these kids were in tag at West and 2 of the 5 at Central High for the commended.
So huge honors for those kids, congratulations.
And I mentioned fluency that Aaron Sorensen was working on with math, and this is the exact fluency kits that they're working with here at Corte to help drill into that and kind of expand a little bit on our curriculum.
Here we have some East Middle School students working on can Halloween candy be endangered orangutans? I don't know what they found out on their conclusions, but that's pretty interesting.
Based on this, I'm gonna be giving up potato chips instead of candy. I'm concerned.
I know.
Price of candy, it might be.
Maybe they don't get enough of it, that's what the problem is.
Books from Birth contacted me. They're working with AM Rotary. They work with Dolly Parton Imagination Library, giving books to students at Munson, right in the delivery room, and then not in the delivery room, but.
Close.
Yeah.
There you go.
Instead of whatever you're we're gonna give you this novel.
It could take your,
Poor time, something I would do.
that and the Bradley method, just get their mind off of it, right?
All right, we'll take the baby down.
Next slide.
Do your books first.
Anyway, they did come in and talk to our elementary principals and our organizing volunteers in every school in the classroom. So it's nice to make that connection, Sunrise Rotary to our elementary principals to be able to make this happen in buildings.
And I think they were at the full board and did a public
They
comment
were,
too.
yes.
Yeah, just such a really cool program on part of Sunrise Rotary, and so I see them talk a lot about this, and just a great option for all of our families in this region to get those books in their kids' hands.
And I would say they've been a proponent to help support when kids are about to turn 3 and have their very first IEP. I bring a book to their home every time when I visit them and welcome to the TCAPS family, so they've been
Very
a
nice.
huge proponent of them.
Couple little just fun videos we threw in here. This is Central High Schools. We're just coming off of our 2 homecoming weeks, so it's a little snapshot of, this is that idea of building community service, right? Our community feel, community culture in your school, and how do you make kids feel like they belong and have a place? Having these types of events does matter and plays into that. So little video here from Central. And then on the next slide here, we've got Wes' video here too, from just some fun activities for students to enjoy their school community, so. And then next up for our high schools, they're gonna be gearing up for Patriot Game. That is that week is sort of that week of October 20th. I know we've done a little bit of a communication about saving the date on that, but there'll be more information you'll see coming out about that. And we've worked really hard, our student senates at both schools work together to choose who will be receiving the funds. That'll be coming out hopefully this week. I know they're meeting together really to celebrate our community and to make it a Traverse City event as much as even though there's a score at the end of the night, but really how do we have fun together? So.
Constitution Day around our different elementary schools, September 17th, so specifically on this day, part of a state requirement, but regardless, students learn different items around the Constitution and history.
Awesome.
Next one, we had our Detroit Red Wings camp at Traverse Heights, so they come in, every kid, I believe, gets a t-shirt, and then they go through some drills with some Detroit Red Wing players, so great opportunities for those kids to kind of meet some of those people and get some physical activity.
Another highlight here of our ESL class, so this would be Amanda's counterpart across town. Just getting these kids out, exposing them to different things. They've got a great, access to the botanical gardens across the street there, so. Oh, sorry, Dan.
I think there was one more.
Back one.
There you go.
And Long Lake introduced their house system, that was last Friday. I was part of that assembly, as far as they got their wheel there is assigning points, and this is it right here. Thanks for including this is wonderful.
Sorry, the volume's.
Dan's getting assigned to a house.
Watch his wheel now, this reminds me of Price is
Oh,
Right.
it's
It's
for you.
like, boom,
It didn't quite make it into the other.
just athleticism here, right here.
What house are you in?
Awesome.
Lightkeepers.
Yeah, the old light keepers.
That's great.
To get a t-shirt.
Didn't wear it today.
I did not, no, well, it's polo today. Try to change it up.
Well, great, excellent meeting all. I know we went long today, but lots of really good information and discussion, and we appreciate all the data you pulled together for us. And with that, I know there was some giddiness at the end. As we approach the 2-hour mark. Our next board curriculum committee meeting will be Tuesday, October 28th at 8:30 a.m. here at Glen Loomis Building. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.